the startup investment world is an insane one, especially these days. And my firm belief is we're going to be looking at the year 2020, 2021 as the insanity, which is the startup investments, evaluations, and we think that it's a bubble that at some point will explode. Yet at the same time, this is the future. Yeah, technology, software is eating the world. Technology is the future. So the question for us always was about the valuations, about the added value, about not being just a part of the trend, but having to carve a special niche. And this for us means that there are a few pillars, few fundamentals. We are we're looking into the areas which are less explored, but still offer an amazing opportunity. And B, we are getting involved only if we think we can add value beyond funding, because although it may not feel like it, if you are a startup raising money, the liquidity now is greater than ever been. So getting money is relatively, and I'm using this term really cautiously, is relatively easy if you are a startup compared to a few years back. Yeah. So with this in mind, our first hypothesis was that Ukraine has had and still has an exploding startup scene. It gave the world unicorns, Grammarly, GitLab, just to name a few. And with our insights into the market, we can be the guys that spot the opportunity at the very early stages, and then critically bring them over to this very developed ecosystem of UK markets, and help the startups to make the next leap, next stage. And we are still pursuing this strategy. So we have Ukrainian startups in our portfolio. But about 6-8 months ago, we realized that actually it's not just Ukrainian startups that offer this opportunity. And in fact, we don't need to go that far to uncover the gaps in the market and to go that far to see where we can add value. And this brings us to our present thesis, our present focus, which is we're looking at early stage immigrant founders, UK based or on their way to the UK, where we are the guys that are looking to uncover the future gems, and probably more importantly, we're the guys that are happy to work, to support and invest these founders that may not have the connections, they're not the locals, they may not have the contacts that would do the introductions, and we are always happy to be the first people in. We don't we don't believe in this whole bullshit of show us your cap table, it has to be oversubscribed, and then we'll carve an area in, and so we have a built-in markup. We think that we see ourselves a bit of like Indiana Jones of the VC world. We are on the hunt for those treasures.
Nice.
I would say they're still early days, right? I would love to say that this is a proven strategy. We have huge exit, not yet. We're building things up. But again, it's a gradual evolution from where we started, and I feel that we're at a good place right now.
Nice. That makes sense. So with Blue Lake and what you're doing right now, I mean, I come from tech. I've always been working in tech, and I have a lot of friends, and I'm surrounded by programmers or project managers, like even as friends or everyday life at work. Some of us, and a lot of the people that I met in the past or have worked in the past, they've tried to become founders, or they had an idea. When you're a programmer, you have an idea, you're like, maybe I can do it myself, or I can grab a few friends and we'll do it. I'll tell you that like this happens a lot lately in the software engineering development scheme, because it's people is, like you said, people are tired just working over time just to make someone else a billionaire. So what do you think? I'm guessing you see a lot of founders, right? Or small founders, big founders, whatever. But what do you think is the main mistake that they do and they never actually make it?
I'm really hesitant. I'll try to answer your question, but there is a caveat. I find it often a bit condescending when you have people doing like the top 10 list of the mistakes that the founders make, and you should do this, you shouldn't do that. The people who don't make mistakes are just the people who do nothing, and it's far too easy to point and say these are the ideal hypothetical scenario which you'll never achieve. But a few things, things that we see a lot, and especially from the techie guys, is over focusing too much on a short-term vision. So what we see is guys that come and they see a problem, and they're focusing on resolving the problem which is in front of them right now, ignoring the frequently interesting, fascinating, huge opportunities that lie, in the longer term as a result of their product. This comes across, let's say, in the deck. You'll see like, okay, there's a particular issue which affects so many people, and we're going to resolve it, completely ignoring that when you're resolving this issue, you're gathering extremely valuable data on this group of people who can then serve different markets and different industries, and has a far greater potential than the immediate solution that you're offering. And this exacerbated by the fact that, especially guys from the kind of IT and techie side of things, so they would be almost pitching you their next release, their next upgrade, which is like, okay, this is interesting, but this is not a VC story, where sadly the mathematics of the VC or pretty much any early stage startup investments means that you have to see a story which is 100x in front of you or better, otherwise the math doesn't make sense. So when we see exceptionally competent founders pitching us a story that, and in 3 years' time, we are going to make 1.5 million revenue. Well, that's good for you. That's a great lifestyle business. You're going to be quite well off, but this is not an investment story. So I think my advice would be longer term horizons, and always try and focus on the big story, especially when you are meeting investors, because we're still humans, we're still animals. We need, we love storytelling, so we need to have that happy ending somewhere in our hopefully near future. Sorry, it's a bit of a rambling answer, but I really wanted to avoid like like keep your deck shorter, or or don't avoid spelling mistakes. That's goes without saying.
So I was always wondering, how does someone find an investing company? We need funding. Everyone says we need funding, and I'm like, because I started a project once. It was kind of like the idea behind it was like it was based in New York, because I have a lot of friends in New York, and I had this friend that was working for a big newspaper that had a lot of incubators inside, and he had this idea, and I said, that's actually a good idea, we should just move forward. But I was on my own. I was literally doing front and back end design of the app, and it was something like Tinder but for barmen, or like waiters, like staff in bars, where you can, because in New York something might happen and you need someone really quickly. So it was working kind of like Tinder, and it was called Tipper, but it had to do with bar owners or restaurant owners looking for for staff. By the way, there's about 1 million of apps right now doing the same thing. Like back then, it was a good idea.
You're on the right track.
And yeah, we were looking for funding, and we never did. The only thing that we got was, that's a great name for an app. That was it. So how does someone find like Blue Lake?
Yeah, well, let me give you again. I'll try to give it. It's going to be a slightly longer but more interesting answer. So it's always useful to understand what your market is, and in this sense, your market are investors. So you are looking to understand how the investment side of things working. And funnily enough, these are the conversations that we're having with our fellow VCs, angels, etc. Is how do I find that startup? How do I find the deal flow? It's all about the deal flow. Everyone is desperate for quality deal flow. So you always have this insane situation where the one side is desperate to find, and when I say desperate, this is not an overestimation, because if you have a fund, and when you hear these huge numbers, 500 million under management, $1 billion under management, these people have a job to investing this money. It's not good enough just to let this money sit in the account. They have to invest them. Yeah. And on the other hand, you have the startups who are quite genuinely suffering from lack of funding, notwithstanding the crazy stories about the rounds. And there is always this, the story about, well, I bumped into an investor in an elevator and he gave me the cash. And this happens, but not nearly as much as, reading Twitter and LinkedIn would make you believe. So my dream is that we're going to be in the universe sometime where you have an objective tool, an automated objective measurement tool that allows to connect the early stage, this key is early stage, pre-seed, seed level startups with an appropriate investor and cutting out a lot of noise in between. But this is my dream. Right now, reality, and this is probably what is of interest, it's about building relationships, and that there is nothing new there. And I think that the best guys that I've seen that fundraise, they don't fundraise, they build relationships. And there are a number of strategies, and I think that some of the tools is always to try and be helpful. Try to position yourself as an instrument. You can help with introductions. You can help with other connections within the ecosystem, and this strategic context building will then start yielding fruits once you're fundraising. So I would say to give yourself a bit of a runway, like 6-8 months, and to use this time to build those contacts. And once you have those contacts in place, the fundraising stops being fundraising, and it's more about, hey, you're sharing an opportunity, you are sharing an idea, and you're making their job easier because, hey, their job is to invest. And I see some guys who are really, really good at it. But an important point which I have to raise here, and this is where things get trickier for immigrant founders. The network in the UK, it really helps if you went to the right school, if you are born into a right social class. And while UK is one of the most welcoming countries, there are bubbles which are really, really hard to pierce. And let's say if you went to Eton and your family, been around for a few decades and is well connected, you're gonna have, and this is not a popular thing. No matter how talented you're compared to others, you'll have a much easier job fundraising. It can get ridiculously easy, and vice versa if you don't have good contacts. And if, let's say, as a founder, you are a great engineer, but maybe you not have the most magnetic personality, and there is nothing wrong with that. Not everyone has to be an amazing public speaker. You'll have a harder job, and this is actually why we are doing what we are doing. With there is this gulf that somebody needs to cross. So we are trying to cross it onto the side of the startups. But yeah, so building networks, yes, but let's not pretend that it's fair, that everyone can do it, and that everyone is starting from there on the equal footing. That's just not true.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, like, if money goes to money, usually that's why I found Blue Lake such an amazing idea, and it's like very interesting. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring you here, because you're doing something that is quite different to what other investing companies are doing, which is really inspirational. And I hope it's going to be profitable in the future. So thank you so much for coming to the show. Everything that you said, it was extremely interesting. And I think it's very, very important for all the listeners, especially the listeners that I have that are all working in tech or are interested in tech. I think they're going to find it very interesting. So yeah, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thanks. And if everybody who is listening, you guys want to apply, please contact us. I'm not promising we're going to do the funding, but we always try to be helpful. And, even if we don't think that your idea is quite a match for us, we always try to provide feedback or to connect you with other investors who might be better suited for your particular startup.
So where can is it Blue Lake Accelerator?
Blue Lake Accelerator, or the easiest way is find me on LinkedIn. Just ping me, and I'll make sure that I will respond. And if you put in a subject line that you're from Dora, I'll make sure that I'll click accept your invite.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great. I'll definitely put your details down below in the podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Dora.